Okay, folks, I think we're about ready to get going here. This is a live seminar this evening and will be recorded. So if you're not able to take notes, have no fear. You can click back on tomorrow morning and be able to listen to the webinar again. I want to welcome everyone to the Hemp Growers Educational Series presented by Hempton Farms. This is our fifth series in a row, and we've gone through a collection of tips and tricks, and along with brought on a panel of experts to discuss the process to hemp growing. Tonight, Thursday, April 30th, one day short of May 5th, I think we'll collectively agree probably the weirdest April in the history of time. So we appreciate everyone finding some time tonight to join us as we venture into the final decision 2020. Adam Trado is our Vice President of Agriculture, and Adam will be presenting here. If I can click over, there we go. There's great Adam. As you can see there, Adam's the head of our agriculture and comes with an unparalleled experience with large-scale companies like John Deere. Adam held various roles at John Deere, including supply chain, product development, and operations. Adam has over nearly a decade of Deere and has moved on to full-time farming as he has taken on the role of Hempton Farms Vice President of Agriculture. He's a fourth generational farmer, comes with a ton of experience, and has put together an ROI calculator that he will review briefly, but I want to let everyone know that is available to you if you decide to partner with Hempton Farms. Adam, if you're able to take yourself off mute, I would like you to go ahead and take over and let me know when you want me to switch the slides.
Sure. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you great, Adam. The slides are not updating, Corey.
Yeah, Corey, I think we're still stuck on the opening slide.
Okay, let me try that again. Kelsey, you might have to jump in and take over. In my neighborhood, when everyone gets home, the internet service drops down a lot.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm switching over.
Well, this is Adam Trado, and while Corey and Kelsey work through that, I'm just going to talk through a couple of things very briefly. You'll see her picture up here on the screen in a short minute. But generally, we have Sarah Hermes from Lockton Insurance Companies join us on these calls. In the essence of time, and we want to spend the bulk of tonight's presentation on genetics and seed selection, Sarah won't be presenting. But I did just want to highlight what she can offer from a crop insurance perspective. Sarah's been very pivotal as we as hemp growers have found both on the federally subsidized crop insurance products, and her company also provides private products as well. The only reason we continue to talk about Sarah and have her come on, as many of you may know, it is too late to buy federally subsidized crop insurance in 2020. But that being said, if you are at all thinking about growing hemp this year, or maybe more importantly next year, even just 1 acre in your county or wherever you plan to grow is going to be pivotal, because that's going to help your insurance coverage that you could secure then in 2021. And depending on your locale, some insurance underwriters require that you have at least 1 year of hemp growing experience before they'll underwrite a policy. So not to sound like a broken record, because I know we've had Sarah on here a couple of times, and again, I understand that it might seem odd that we can't buy a federally subsidized crop insurance at this point in the year anymore. But again, we just want to remind everybody that if you're at all thinking about it, just to get 1 acre under your belt is going to pay huge dividends in terms of the insurance that you can gather in 2021 and beyond. So that's all we'll say on that. Corey, if you want to, or Kelsey, if you want to hop to the next slide. So this webinar series started, I think, back in the middle of March. So we've been doing this for 6 or 7 weeks now. As some of you may recall, we had originally intended to host it on site down in Missouri. And then with the COVID thing going around, we had to jump onto this webinar series as an alternative. So the speakers we originally had lined up were very Missouri focused. We started with a policy discussion by Alan Freeman, who's the director of policy in Missouri. And then we moved over to economics from Dr. Ray Massey, a professor at the University of Missouri. And he talked about really the profits that could be seen from all kinds of hemp, CBD, fiber, grain, so on and so forth. And then Justin Kay, also from the University of Missouri, talked about agronomics. So Not so much the economics of it, but fertility rates, weeding practices, planting practices, that type of thing. And then, as most of you may recall, if you've been on this webinar series with us, we kind of transitioned from their presentations into a tool that we used, and Corey mentioned it briefly, our own ROI calculator, to really try and pull all of that together. If you're a seasoned hemp grower, maybe not something you necessarily need, but if this is your first year growing hemp, it can be pretty overwhelming. Trying to pull together the number of seeds you need, the tons of fertilizer you might need, be it liquid or dry. So we developed a calculator to really help pull that together for the folks on the line. And of course, as Corey mentioned, return on investment is huge, and aggressively managing your financials in 2020 and beyond is going to be key for hemp. Going back 2 or 3 years, I'm sure you guys have all heard about some pretty crazy, per acre returns. Unfortunately, those days are gone. And that's not to say you can't make money in hemp. We still feel very strongly that you can, but you need to manage it a little more aggressively than maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when you could just kind of go throw something out there and probably get a halfway decent CBD crop and make some pretty good money. So no different than any other crop you're growing. I'm sure for the seasoned farmers on the line, I'm sure you guys are aggressively managing your financials for other commodities that you're producing. So, Corey, if you just want to jump to the next slide. So again, we won't spend a lot of time on this tonight, and I understand the eye chart on the right there is a little overwhelming. In prior presentations, we have walked through that line by line and number by number. And again, we don't have the time to spend on that tonight, but really what it does is it pulls together a handful of things. Pulls together that agronomic plan, so your fertility and what the fertility is going to cost you, and any weeding plans and what they're going to cost you. From an operational perspective, making sure that you've got your equipment right size, that it's not too big, but that it's not too small either, to make sure that you can get it done in the allowable time that you have to plant your crop. So this tool, it's multifaceted. As Corey mentioned, if you're purchasing seed or genetics from Hempton, we're happy to provide this as a service free of charge. And we can use as little or as much of the info that it generates that you may want. So again, in the essence of time, we won't be going into it tonight, but I will just kind of wrap by saying, if anybody hasn't had the chance to see the presentations that we've given in detail on this, I think my contact info will be at the end of this presentation. Happy to do a one-on-one with anybody that might be on the line tonight or might want to pick my brain. Or on the flip side, if you've got your own pro formas or financials that you want us to review, or a spreadsheet, we're happy to look at those and pick those apart too. So that being said, if there's any questions right now, happy to take one or two, or I'll be on the line all evening and happy to take them at the end of the call as well, if you guys think of some in the meantime.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Support.
As we're moving on to the next presenter, we're excited this evening. For the first time in our educational series, we have our fearless leader and CEO, Jansen Homebrecker, on the line. He's someone that has taken this from seed to where we're at today. And we all on the line and the Hempton teams are very thankful for Jansen and his vision and his thought that has gone into growing Hempton farms. He's someone that comes to the industrial hemp industry via the technologies industry, which kind of sounds like a weird transition, but it's one that really parallels when you talk about taking an idea from concept and bringing it into full fruition. He has over 20 years of global experience, which pairs very nicely when it comes into building an organization of the scale that Hempton Farms has become, to allow to put individuals in place, technologies in place to allow us to deliver the wonderful plant and wonderful experiences that him and his team has been able to perform over the last couple of years in agriculture. So with Jansen, if you're available to take yourself off mute, I'd like you to kind of go through and go through the seed decision 2020.
Great. Thank you very much, Corey. Let's go ahead and skip 2 slides real quick. I think we've talked about Hempton Farms, who we are and what we can do. I think the important for us, for everyone here, this is for the farmer, by the farmer. And a lot of what we want to tell you is something that, while I might not have the background to say I was a lifelong farmer, I've lived and breathed the farming community for a while now. I grew up in the state of Iowa, and farming was somewhat in the blood within all the community up and around me. So it's always been kind of something that I've had out there. So when I say it's for the farmers, by the farmers, yes, I understand. I'm not from the technology world, but I have lived and breathed most of what you guys have done for hemp farming, and that's one of the things that I took away from farming, is that you need to be able to do it, to say, and really teach about it. A disclaimer that I make with everyone as they get started on hemp farming. Hemp farming is not easy, guys. I think it's really, really, really important for everyone to realize that when they get going. I don't want to discourage anyone from getting away from hemp farming. I just want to make sure that everyone gets a nice level set and understands what they're getting into. I've seen many, many great farmers that, they can and will fail at anything if they're not prepared. And hemp is no exception to that rule. It's not, as Adam talked about, it's not something where you're going to come in and make $50,000 an acre by just throwing it in the ground. And I think that's really important for us to get started. Kelsey, next slide. The big thing that I can tell you that I've learned in the last few years, and a lot of this started as research for us, is setting your farm up for success. It's not a one size fits all. I think there's a big misconception when it comes to hemp that this is up in Colorado from a lot of people, and they're going to be up there growing a little bit of weed from there, and that necessarily isn't everything that hemp farming is all about. Hemp farming does have the potential to be America's third crop, maybe not in the CBD game, but when you talk about the fiber, all of the potential of what hemp can do, hemp definitely has that ability. It's not a one size fits all. So one of the things that I think everybody needs to really understand is, what is your strength and what is your goal from this? Obviously, everybody's goal is to make money. But farming, I was talking to a gentleman, I believe, that's on here tonight. Farming is something it's a livelihood, it's a living. And, this is something that everybody really needs to be able to get in there and say, listen, yes, I'm in for the investment. And yes, this is what it's going to take for me, to go to the next level. I've heard great stories from people that their grandfather was a farmer, their great-great-grandfather was a farmer, their father was a farmer, was kind of a farmer, but he kind of got out of it. And the grandson is now starting to get back into farming because of hemp. And so, it can bring back a little bit, but it's also, something that it's not for everyone. And it's out there to make some money, but it's also a lot of work. Really important for everyone to understand. So let's go through talking about your strengths and what it takes to get you prepared. One of the things that I like to talk with everybody from a process is, I'm not saying, hey, this is easy as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're done. It is not that way. But it's understanding, as you go through this and your planning sessions, what is your goal? What are you planning from your genetics? And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And aligning your goals and your genetics together. Those are very, very key things. And that's kind of where we're going to end tonight. We've talked about some field management with Adam. We've talked about harvest with Joe from there. We've talked a lot about selling your crop based on your goal, but everything starts with that goal and continues to a drive down. And we need to adjust as you move on. That's the key to every good farming plan, is to be able to make those adjustments. Farmers are very resourceful people. They can fix about anything if they give their mind to it. So just got to keep going. Next slide, please. All right. So for those that are looking at it from a growth perspective, this is where it all starts, and it's really hard to pivot in the middle of a season if you set your business plan to grow 1, 2, or 3. For example, if you sought out, and this is one of the markets that has happened today, is people said, oh, I'm going to grow for biomass. And they went out and they picked a genetic for biomass. They grew it like biomass. And then they realized the market wasn't there for biomass, so they've been trying to sell it as smokable flour. And it's just not there for a lot of people, where you can do it. Likewise, if they go out and try to sell something as smokable flour, they grow it as smokable flour, they've put massive input costs into that. When they turn around and realize it's not smokable and have to sell it as biomass, they're going to take a large loss from that. So making sure that you align your goal with what your end result should be, and picking everything right now as you're planning out to your session, is ultra important for your success. And fiber is fiber. There's also the ability to do with fiber, to do hemp seeds for like food production in there. But obviously those are very different strains. If you're going to grow fiber and some of those other, some of the other crops that are producing from there, you have to have the right seeds for it. Growing smokable and growing biomass doesn't give you fiber at the end of the day. You must grow the right genetics. So next slide, please. So at Hempton Farms, right now we offer currently 6 different genetics. And tonight I just wanted to kind of, take a few minutes and run through a handful of those genetics for everybody out there. And talk about some of the positives and some of the negatives for each one of them, and making sure, again, aligning that goal from where you want to go. The reason we offer a lot of the genetics, it starts really on the right-hand side from levels of different things. We needed to be able to do a lot of genetics for different levels of people and different levels of things. Hemp itself, genetics is not necessarily a one size fits all. It's not, hey, I buy this genetic and I can do anything and everything I want. Now you can if you're a really, really advanced grower and understanding everything that you want to be able to do. But there is other genetics that are easier to work with and allow you to get into it and provide you less risk. 90% of what we do as farmers is do risk management. That's why we talk about the crop insurance so often, is to make sure that we are able to mitigate as many risks as possible, because we know Mother Nature is not always super kind to us, and might intervene and prevent us from really controlling our own destiny. When we did last couple years, over the last 2 years, when I started this journey, and in fact last year, 2018, we planted about 38 different varieties. And those same 38 varieties, 35 varieties, depending on which, we had a couple of varieties that were close to each other, in New Mexico, some of them in Illinois, and trying out which ones we wanted. We narrowed down to really the 6 that we felt were going to give us the best goals for 2020 from there. And those are the ones that I want to kind of go through. We have the Berry Blossom, and I've got a full thing on it. We've got Merlot, we've got a Sour Tea, we've got a Trophy Wife, an El Jefe, and a Moneymaker. And we're going to kind of run through those. But what's really important for you to understand is the beginner levels and what they're good for. And this was kind of a quick chart. 5 is obviously the best. 1 is very poor from looking at this chart from high to low. So if you don't mind, let's go to the next slide. We're just going to dig into each one of these. So if we look at, there's a typo on this slide. I just, for the record, that should be a type 3 CBD dominant flower. I apologize about that, and we'll make sure to get that fixed. For those that aren't aware of the different types, there was a study done in the 70s that really went in and identified the different types of cannabis plants that are out there. And so a type 1 type of plant that you would see today would be something you would find in a typical dispensary. They would be high THC and low CBD. A type 2 would be a 1-to-1 blend. So if you went into a dispensary, you would find something that had a very high and midline, not very high, but a midline CBD and a midline THC, or a 1-to-1 ratio. And a type 3 scenario from there would be a high CBD type plant with extremely low extremely low THC, which is where all of our sativa plants live within the industrial hemp line. And then we do have a type 4, which would be something other than CBD or THC from a cannabinoid. And we're going to talk about that because that's really just emerged in this last 12 months. From 1970s, when they talked about the type 4 possibilities, to it coming alive, really today's market with the type 4 CBD or CBG dominant flower. So what we're looking at is a Berry Blossom. It's a very pretty flower, for the record. It's a little more of a beginner flower. It's been around for a long time. It's really been grown for quite a few years out of the Colorado area. Whether they call it cherry Kandahar, Colorado cherry, or a lot of the different cherries that have been in Colorado, its lineage starts in the cherry, crossed with a Chardonnay. Part of why we've introduced this one, we didn't introduce this one in the last couple of years, is we needed something that's easier to grow, for a lot of people that is easier to manage on your total THC. With the new 2018 laws looking at total THC, this is something that you really need to be able to manage, is something that is not going to go hot super quick, and you don't have to be you don't have to be a super advanced grower to do this. Now, this particular flower is not a great flower to grow in a high desert. Doesn't love that. Grows well pretty much in your plains, your Midwest, all the way down through your southeast and east coast, where you have a nice, humid climate to a moderate climate, but not 120 dry heat. It's not a great plant for that particular thing. It's a great biomass plant. It's okay at smokable, but it's typically, if you're going to plant this and you're going to say, I'm going to do a ton of it for smokable, it's not something that the market's going to give you a high demand for right now. So when you're planting this, make sure you understand that if I do grow it for smokable, even if I grow, in the terms of our world here, quote unquote, fire, or the best stuff that's out there, you're probably not going to get a premium for it due to the genetics it is. And in today's market, for example, you might get, $100 or $150 pounds for berry blossoms, while you might get $250 to $300 for a different genetic that's got a more high demand on it. And that's going to continue next year, probably even lower. So if you're looking at something and saying, oh, I really want to do a biomass, I'm a new grower, and I want to get started, and I'm somewhere from, the Carolinas to Colorado, a berry blossom is a great choice for you to get started. On the right-hand side, you can see our official seed label. We are, by the way, licensed in, I think, 5 or 6 states, and we're trying to get licensed in a handful more as a actual seed permit. Not every state, like Colorado, doesn't require a seed handler license, seed dealer license. But we do have them in a handful of states that require them, and we're continuing to grow those and get those up. It's another thing to look for when you're talking with a seed dealer, making sure that they are actually registered with the state if that's required in your state. So I know Florida, for example, just came online this week, and we've already obtained our seed dealer license to make sure that we can grow into Florida. I think in South Carolina, we already have our seed dealer license because they require it. North Carolina doesn't, so on and so forth. Illinois does not. Iowa, Indiana do. We have the seed dealer license in both of those states. New Mexico doesn't. We don't need it there because we're a grower as well now. So that's a little bit about this flower. It's a great entry-level flower. I wouldn't say it's going to cause, as much trouble for you. It's not going to go super high on THC, and it's not going to go super high on CBD. This is probably something that you're going to end the year on if you're on total THC at a probably 8% type thing, from a CBD level, and come out, and you have a relatively good chance of not going hot with minimal effort for this particular strand. If you go to the next slide, Kelsey, for me, please. So this one I do have labeled right as a type 3. This is the Merlot. So this has the cherry wine crossed in with it. The cherry wine, that cherry Kandahar, that comes back a little bit farm. Cherry wine, for those that don't know, that's got the cherry crossed back with a wife in it to give you a cherry wine is where that comes from. Also an easier one to grow. It typically can, if you get a little cooler nights, you can get that nice purple as you see there. That's from Illinois last year on that particular one. It's not a super great one again for the higher climates because it has that berry blossom in it still. But adding that cherry wine adds a little more smoker's delight. It adds a little bit more to it where people like it. It's still not a super high end. If you go back to our chart, it's not a 5 on smokable. And it's not necessarily a 5 on biomass, but it's a nice one to kind of get you going entry level, easier to manage for total THC and get you going. Again, our seed label report is there to talk about it. Every one of our seeds do come, if you ask for it. We do have a AOSC report on them to actually show the third-party germination. We also do have a third-party report done on all of our reports for feminization, showing the feminization rate of our seeds, proving that we do have them. That's a big thing to ask for when you're starting to buy and work with seed dealers is making sure that maybe they're not AOCA registered, and we are working on that registration right now, but at least they have all the reports to make sure that they're giving you the quality that they say. As everyone knows in this industry, there's a lot of snakes and a lot of snake oil salesmen out there. That's one thing that probably drives me the biggest bananas in being in this industry is the truth that's being told out there, and and being able to be above that, or at least try to be above it and do the best we can. If you can go to the next slide for me, Kelsey. All right, our sour tea. This is actually one that we've got kind of coming in. I think I have it as beginner moderate more on the charts, and I probably have a little typo here, and I apologize about the slides. This one really starts to get into our genetics as far as something we've really targeted for certain regions. This has a T5, which is a T1, T1, T5. A lot of people different. It's all the different Trump strains, that this crosses with. It's an extremely fast-growing plant. It's vigorous in a lot of what it does. Anything that's got that T5, T1, depending on what you want to look at it. T5 is just the 5th generation of the Trump version of it. Having that in there really allows it to grow well. It's one of our best ones as far as quick growth and getting good established roots for it. People do like it from a smokable perspective, so it's got a good smokable. It's got a great biomass because it's a high yielder. With that T5 is a very large nug, so you get you a little bit more poundage per plant out of that particular plant from it. It also has a sour cherry ultra that we've done, and that sour cherry ultra is a sour tsunami crossed with our cherry ultra. And part of why we crossed that up is cherry ultra, if you notice, is not on here. It's a signature that we do grow real well and grow a lot of. It's just not quite as stable in some of the outdoor climates. Crossing it with a sour tsunami is something that we've been able to get going. And the cherry ultra is very narrow. It needs a little bit more moisture, so we haven't released that one. But when you cross it with the Trump and putting in the sour tsunami, getting you to our sour tea, this becomes an extremely stable plant that gives you a nice large yield from it, and gives you kind of the best of both worlds, a little bit of smokable, a little bit from the biomass. Runs real well from anywhere from really the Midwest to the Southeast, where you've got kind of a subtropical climate. You've got a little bit more warmth on it, and it's not a super late finisher. It will finish off a little earlier because typically it's got about an 8-week flower period to get it there. Decent germ rate as well, over 96% on this particular batch. And this is one that we're real proud of for this last year. This is kind of newer to the market this year, as it took us the last couple of years to really get it to a stable genetic and ready to go for C-tips. Next slide, please. All right, trophy wife. This is one. This has got a typo on it as well, and I'm not real good at editing my slides. This is not a cherry sour ultra with T5. This is actually got the cherry wine crossed back with the wife. Is the genetics here on this particular flower, and this is a particular flower that a lot of our true smokers really like this particular flower. You can see the white crystallization on it as it grows up. It gives that aroma of a real grassy diesel or a cheesy smell that traditional smokers from the cannabis world really like on it. So it does real well on the smokable side of the house due to some of the flavor profiles on it. It also is a very good plant from a dumping perspective on yielding. It grows real well in the Midwest, really across. It does okay in a dry arid. We were able to grow it in a dry and arid climate. It's not something that yields as high. What we did find in a little bit more humid climates yielded about 30-40% more than dry arid. but it was able to really sustain and grow in those climates. And you can see that particular flower right there was being grown in New Mexico this last year. One thing about this particular plant, it is a beginner to moderate plant. It takes a little bit more time from a growing perspective to really control it. When you start getting into really finite flower that's really good on smokable, you want to be able to really understand your nutrient program. It's, while, Adam talked earlier about laying down powdered nutrients and getting 150 pounds of this down in your soil, when you talk about smokable and really getting the large dark green buds or the large light green buds, depending on how you want to do it, you really got to be a little more of an advanced grower to do that. You've really got to be able to have some drip lines and foliars. You've got to be able to really control what you're giving that plant and how you're doing it. So if you want to get that to be a smokable, it's going to be a harder grow. I will say this particular plant also on the total THC can grow hot faster than some of the other strains that we have. So, if you're in a state that's going to be extremely conservative on total THC, this is one that I would put you in the advanced category of a grower to really get a premium smokable product in a state that's going to be extremely aggressive on total THC. On the new laws. Now, if they're total THC, but on the 2018 Farm Bill, i.e. they're not picking at the very, very top and so on and so forth, this is one you can do. But if it's in the 2018 Farm Bill approved, USDA approved states like Florida, would not touch this particular flower because you're going to grow hotter quicker. That large cola on the top is where they're going to pull from, and it's going to have the higher levels of the THCA on it. It still won't have any Delta 9. In the Delta 9, this particular plant will grow like a champ, and you'll never have any issues. It's just really on your total THC as you go through it. Next slide, please. All right, the El Jefe. This is probably, it's one of my favorites, if I'm being honest with you. I actually got the privilege of naming this one because we grow it, and it came out as really as the boss, is what that particular means in Spanish. We did a lot of work cultivating this down in New Mexico. And part of why we called her the boss is because, as a plant, when you're growing up these particular plants, all of these plants are females, so we always refer to them a lot of times as girls. So she did this, she did that in that term. And really this plant, she took everything we could throw at her, high desert heat, 120 degrees for days on end, really anything and everything. And she just grew, and grew and grew and grew. While other plants sit there and wilted, this particular plant just, what we call also praying to the sun. When you see a really happy cannabis plant, their leaves are kind of pointing up like you're doing kind of a yoga or praying to the sun with your arms wide open and going straight up. As plants start to limp a little bit and they drip down, that's telling you that they're unhappy with some of their conditions, whether it's their roots, whether it's the nutrients, whether it's just too hot, maybe too cold, so on and so forth. But this is one that absolutely just crushed it for us. It was our largest yielder for biomass, one of our best for smokable. It had a lot of tropical fruits in it, so traditional smokers didn't like it, but when we put it into our cigarettes and some of the other stuff we do, she was a phenomenal growth. But I will tell you, she goes hotter faster than anything else we've done because she can handle that heat. She also has the ability to grow hotter on total THC faster and quicker than some of the other varieties we have. So we put this particular type of variety really in the advanced category, that if you're a phenomenal grower and you know what you're doing and you're up for a challenge, this particular plant can grow out like no tomorrow. But you have to be really careful with her and make sure that you're guiding her and really, really do know what you're doing, because if you're not careful, this particular plant can go hot quickly and you can lose your entire crop from there. And I'm never advising anybody to say, oh, it's going to go hot or not. We have proof that, you can keep her under total THC. You just need to be a little more of an advanced grower to grow this particular strand. So, that's part of this educational series, is really kind of wanting through and talking about each one to say, hey, not every one of these are created equal. And we go through. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the moneymaker. This is also one of my favorites. This is something that we've spent really the last, I don't know, this is 18 months really in the process of it, where we've gone in and really, focus on it. We actually, for those that don't know, you saw last year was really the first CBG plants that kind of came out. We were chasing it last year, didn't have it ready for a CBG run last year, and really getting it stabilized. And getting it stabilized is just really getting that high fermentation rate, getting that high germination rate, getting it so it doesn't have phenols that autoflower and do everything else that we've done on it. But this particular one, we've had, had a lot of work on it. We actually were going to release this particular seed actually a little earlier in the season, and obviously, ethically, we should have, we couldn't have. I didn't feel like it was the right move for us. Our first batch that we did, when we did a lot of our testing on it, had a little higher autoflower rates than we would have liked. And you're going to find the CBG markets are not quite as stable from a flower perspective. So this last run that we're finishing up right now, we just finished it up, or we're in the process of finishing it up right now and drying it. We've got pretty good stability on it. We've already pulled down some and tested it out. Had great, results across the board, as you can see, with our germination ratios on it. Fresh, it's just, it's literally, as people are getting it, they're going to be getting it, several weeks old to make sure it's, it is dried and ready to go, and it's ready to go. This is a CBG. This is your type 4 plant. So this is going to be in high demand for 2019. If you're a new grower and you're in a total THC state, and you're looking for something that you're guaranteed to not go hot and not have to burn your crop, then a CBG flower is your absolute must-have from that. And that's what we've got here with this particular one. That's why we're calling it really the money maker for us. It's really, we haven't tested as fair warning on it as everywhere, but every scenario that we've tried to simulate with this for the last year and done a little bit of growth, it's grown well in pretty much all of the conditions. You can see that. That's actually on Illinois, is where that particular plant was grown right there that you're looking at. Last year with us, it grew in New Mexico, grew well. Never did it go hot anywhere that we did it from a growth perspective. So beginner to moderate, just because if you really want to do a high-end smokable, as I said earlier, it's never really going to be about a beginner level flower. It's not about putting it in the ground, watching the sun bake on it and the rain doing it. You've got to really understand your nutrient programs. You've got to understand when you want to hit it with a little more nitrogen, where you want to back nitrogen off and possibly hit it with some more, different other, phosphate and some of the other chemicals, potash or whatever you want to hit it with there to do the bloom. And that can really increase the size of your bud, the density of your bud, and a lot of the other characteristics that people are looking for from a smokable. That's why it's got some of the moderate characteristics to it as a whole. And just as a final note for anyone on this webinar, we are offering a few specials on it. We do know that there's a lot of people out there that are going to start late. We're having a really good season with this, and we've had great results with this particular strand from a growing perspective, and a lot of people asking about it. So we're actually going to be doing some price drops and some specials for anybody that's on this, and we'll talk about that code in just a minute for what it is. But we do want to be able to offer a little bit better aggressive pricing, especially if anybody that's been on these webinar series for us and really listen to, spend a few of the evenings with us. We want to work with you guys, as we talked about, work for the farmers, by the farmers, and we understand that we need to be able to, during times like this with COVID, be able to give back a little bit. I'm not saying we're going to give away, but if we can knock down the price a little bit on this and make it a little bit easier for people to switch over and say, I was going to do a CBD based on flower price, but but the CBG was just, it's 20 cents too high. Let's take that off a little bit and see if we can and grow that. So let's talk about that in just a minute. Next slide, please. All right. So I know I'm probably going to run over, and I got to speed up my sake. I talk too much, guys. Fair warning. The big thing, as we talk about it right now, once you've picked your genetics, now you're picking your planting option. These are the two crucial pieces as you're going through this. Key to this whole thing is timing and soil prep. So let's talk about this. I won't talk about the soil prep quite as much as I'd like to, but I will. Seeds. Go ahead, Kelsey. Next slide, please. All right. So really, there's three options for you. There's seeds, and then there's two options of transplants, which would be seed starts and clones. I just want to quickly talk through each one of the basics of them, so make sure everybody really understands what they're getting and what they're doing it. The seeds they're a direct seed, so they're phenomenal, easy to plant. They're the cheapest overall option because you're not paying for anything other than the seed. You're just throwing it directly into the soil. It does have a strong taproot, meaning you have the biggest possible plant you're going to get. That's one of the fundamental differences between a clone and a seed. The seed has a taproot. Therefore, typically what you're going to see is anything that's seed-based, if it's going to be 10 foot for that, a clone of that might stop off at 5 to 6 feet, a little bit shorter of a plant. The negatives really from there, you've got possibly a little bit lower germ rate on it, because if you're only at less than 98% germination ratio on it, then you've got a handful of gaps there from a germination. Mother Nature can control that germination too. Obviously, in human ear, I'm going to be able to control that from there. So, and then obviously the last thing is you've got to control your seed depth, which is key from there. And you've got to be able to weed out the males, even if you're having a high feminization rate of 1,000 plants, 4,000 to 1 ratios that are out there that are typically seen with a lot of our genetics. You're still going to have to weed out those males, just a handful you have. Next slide, please. All right, so seed starts, these are going to give you 100% germination ratio because we're only going to plant the ones that are germinated. You do have your strongest taproot because you have the taproot. That means you're going to have the biggest possible plant. And this will be your highest yielding per acre option that you have available to you, is going with a seed start. So if you're wanting the biggest possible yield to have the perfect field, a seed start is going to give you that yield. The negatives to these is you do have to do transplanters, so you got a higher seed cost. Obviously, it's a lot slower when you're running through transplanters. You still have to worry about the males, and you have to worry about transplant shock if you don't know what you're doing from transplanting. Next slide, please. And your last option is clones. Again, you're always going to have 100% female, so you're not going to have to worry about weeding out the males. You've got 100% germ rate. Plants will be uniform, assuming they're all from the same variety. If you buy from us, you're all going to have a single mom where it came from. Again, no taproot, so your yield's going to be lower, so it's not going to be able to get up quite as high. It's also not going to have that taproot that's going to be able to get down into a little bit deeper into the soil and really allow you to anchor that plant in. So if you've got a little bit of a drought, a clone is going to die first before a seed start will, because that taproot might be down 2 or 3, 4 feet, getting a little bit more nutrients from deeper within the soil if you have to do that. And you always have the ability with transplant shock. In fact, you have a higher risk of transplant shock with a clone than you do with any of the different types of transplants that are out there. Next slide, please. All right, real quick, these are just general population rules for everyone to think of. These are not by any means overall, but if you're planting, the earliest we really recommend anybody planting is early June. And I've been burned by this now quite heavily. So getting in much earlier than early June to mid-June, you're looking at about a population of 2,000 plants. Mid-June to early July, you're looking at about a population of 3,000 plants. You're able to tighten that up because your plants won't quite be as big a month later. And then if you're in late July to early August, you're going to have to tighten it up a little bit more in the 4,000 plant range to really tighten up that population and get your growth. People say it's not possible, but if you look at who is Hempton Farms and that background you look at, that particular plant, that particular field was planted on August 5th of 2019. It was our best yielding plant field, and it was still planted in August. It was transplants, and it was population of 4,400 on it. So it was a little bit denser population, but it was a phenomenal yielding field for us. So you can plant fairly late, especially when you're doing transplants. And this is just a good general rule. Next slide for me, please. This is a custom population chart that I did, that we did for a lot of people, really looking at not just every possible population, but just really going out and looking at some of the more common row spacing and some of the plant spacing that you would put in there. So I know a lot of people look at it and say, hey, I'm planting 48 by 48 or 4 feet by 4 feet. You'd be looking at a population of about 2,723 plants per acre. There, anything in green is going to be really an ideal scenario for you, depending on where you're at and how you're doing it. Light green, so on and so forth, backing off into the reds, unless you're talking about some of the autos from there. So just to give you a quick population counter for you, going to be able to go in very quickly, look at it as you're counting and populate your population. Next, please. All right, so just so everybody knows, from Hempton's perspective, any of our seeds, we do typically 72 hours of payment. We're now starting to ship. We didn't have everything shipping really all the way around because we were pulling things in from Colorado and some of the other locations as we did different grows on this particular thing. They're all in one location except for our moneymaker. That's shipping in late May to early, possibly even right at the beginning there, the late May on the moneymaker because we're pulling that down and finishing that right now. 72 hours of payment in full. And if you just want to put a deposit on it and wait till June to do it, there's a 20% deposit required to hold any seed. And once you put that 20 deposit, we will hold those seeds. A seed start needs to be at least 21 days in advance. Clones, likewise, 21 days in advance. And we are requiring a 50% deposit for us to start and grow any one of those particular plants up. That has to be paid before we can get started on it. And we do offer local regional zones across the board. Seeds obviously ship out of our New Mexico facility now. And seed starts can ship either in North Carolina, Illinois, Colorado, or New Mexico. We have all of those. And then cloning we have in New Mexico, Colorado, and in Virginia, just on the Virginia state line, from the North Carolina state line. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the things that we want to be able to do, you've done a lot of these seminars right now. Now is a lot of time to talk about actually making a move. We've seen our activity uptake in the last week or two. Now that COVID possibly is coming a little bit behind us, start to jump up quite a bit from an activity. So one of the things we want to be able to do, any order that you've got 10 acres or more, we'll do the consultation that Adam talked about from there, get on that spreadsheet, really dive into your input costs so you can have a controlled number on input costs and manage those expectations. Start to really plan for that goal to be able to nail it, for this 2020 season. Again, mention Hempton webinar for 2020 and receive a discount on our CBG side seeds. Talk to your sales reps, and they can kind of run through what levels of discounts we can be able to do for you. An important thing, as Adam mentioned before, farmers are all about risk management, reducing risk. So if this is something you think is going to be a long-term strategy for you, make sure you do throw in at least, that 1 acre this particular year if you think it's long-term. So at least you can get crop insurance, for next year. I think we've talked a little bit about it. Hemp on hemp is probably not something you're able to really get a lot of insurance for. So think about your crop rotation. Think about, general agronomic practices that are going to be there so that you can make this part of your rotation and make it part of America's third crop as it grows. Next slide, please. All right. So I tell this to everybody because, from selling crop, I just got to beat this into everybody's head because it's just so important to me and so near dear to heart. Selling your crop, it all depends on what you grew and your network. You can grow the best stuff on earth. If you don't have the network to grow this isn't like you take it to the local co-op and unload it. You're probably going to be sitting on it. So you got to manage that and start working within the networks. Make sure you start to work with people. And that's one of the things Hempton wants to be able to do is help people get those networks out. So if farmers grow our genetics and they grow our seeds, we want to be able to make introductions to buyers and help them move that particular thing, particular product or load that you come out. Don't ever count your money until it's done. Don't count on the $40,000, $50,000 per acre and get rich scheme because that's not going to happen. Another thing the farmers probably don't understand is probably holding your crop, until the spring of the following season. Right now, this month has been one of our biggest months to unload crops. Up to date, even though we started harvesting, 6 months ago, now is when a lot of crops are being unloaded right now. And then the last thing, of course, guys, as you talk with people, I think there's a ton of people that got burned in the last year. Make sure the contracts are real, and is who you're doing with. Are they going to be around in 2020, or are they just selling you something to go down the river to walk away? With that being said, this is my last slide. I tied it up, I think 5 minutes left, so I know that doesn't leave much time for questions, but Corey, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jansen. Justin, are you able to come off mute?
Yeah, Corey, I'm right here.
Excellent. You're so much better at moderating than me. I'd like to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Well, Jansen, I want to bring you back on real quick. Dennis here had a question, if you can check the chat. Dennis has said that they're going to be growing in central upstate New York for the first time. It looks like they might have a little bit of experience with medical marijuana. Seems like it's a rainy spring, but he's asking about, any recommendation for a good smokable genetic. They plan to plant with, in plastic with drip. You have any recommendation on that?
Yeah, so I would definitely stay away if you're going to go there. I mean, that's kind of where your trophy wife would be a really nice one for you to look at. You could experiment a little bit with the El Jefe, being a little bit more seasoned grower. You have the drip tape from to being able to control those things. So you've got some of the basics there. The sour tea would also be one that is going to be probably a great one, and then of course. If you're wanting to really mix it up, I mean, the money maker is going to be obviously, it's going to be a winner for you to really, get you out there and get probably your highest yields, especially if we're able to offer near CBD pricing on some of our seeds, from there. So I'd stay away from the beginner ones, and I'd probably go to the moderate ones. I don't know if I'd quite go into the El Jefe from an advanced perspective. But maybe if you're up for a challenge on a small bit, you could look at it just to see how it does compared to the other ones. But the trophy wise, probably really in the sour tea are probably right about where you'd like to be, giving you a nice balance, from those.
Got it. It looks like Dennis has another question here asking if any organics are available.
You're talking about like a USDA certified organic piece. Is that what you're talking about? I'm assuming. I'm just going to answer that real quick. He hasn't answered it. From a USDA certified organic property. So USDA certified organic basically puts a requirement in there that you do have to buy everything, USDA organic, unless it's not available. And when it comes to feminized seed, you're not going to find certified USDA certified organic feminized seed available. So there is an exception allowed for organic farming and getting that kind of all done from there. And one thing that one of my friends here that's an agronomist that's on the call did remind me to talk about as you're doing the soil prep. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it is super important to make sure you look at those heavy metals. I can't tell you how many times this year we've done some testing, and I could show you different results from people that failed their heavy metal tests, and they grew everything, and they spent the whole year doing it and cultivating it, only to find they've got too much arsenic or lead or something in their soil, and now can't get it. One of the big advantages though of hemp is it does clean up the soil. So for them, they are going to they're going to turn right around and be able to probably have that soil be cleaned up for this next year, but they probably lost their crop this year due to do that. And then of course pesticide residuals and stuff like that. Make sure you're smart about when you're spraying them, to make sure that you're not spraying it with pesticides that are going to be wrong as you're growing through. So great point on that. And then on the organic side of the house, hopefully that answers it. As far as the growing it organic, you can absolutely grow it organic. And in fact, I will be. I'm working on a couple different white papers right now, and I've been working with a lot of certified organic growers in the Carolina, Virginia region, and getting a bunch of different nutrient levels for people that want to grow smokable and want to grow, organic. One of the hard things with when you're going organic, as I've been learning from this, when you want to go 100% organic, is trying to go and control everything exactly. So you can't quite get as high as, say, a synthetic fertilizer on some of the pieces. And being able to have something that's exactly like the 10-10-10 or something like that, you might get like one of the ones that we're working on for phosphorus for bloom is a 3-10-10, organic fertilizer to get you through. So hopefully that answers your question, Dennis, on the organics. If not, please reach out to reach out to us afterwards on a sales rep, and we would love to be able to sit down, and I'm sure Adam can answer a lot of these questions a lot better than I can. But I would, I'll fire away and do the best we can.
Awesome. And Jansen, I was talking to a couple of farmers the other day, and these are more, current farmers, large scale almond farmers in California. And everyone's, obviously hemp is, has grown so rapidly. Everyone's talking about it. It's the latest and greatest thing. But, at Hempton, we're big believers that this is a crop for the next 100 years, right? That a lot of products that we see today that are being made with whatever kind of paper it might be, and there's so many other, there's like, I don't know, like 220,000 feasible products with hemp. For a first time farmer, would you be looking to grow, biomass or smokable flour, given the idea that, like, hey, I want to get into this. I don't want to take necessarily a huge risk and kind of, go for gold on the first year, but I know that I want to be able to, learn about this crop in detail. What would you recommend to someone?
Well, so I mean, I think that's kind of a two-part question. So I mean, if you're looking at it just from a pure educational perspective, Justin, then biomass is always going to be your easiest to do it. But if you really, really want to be able to learn this crop and be an expert at it, then going for a little bit of a smokable on a very small scale is actually going to be able to give you the largest growth in your career, because there at that point you're really going to pay attention to every discoloration of the plant, pay attention to every little detail, controlling the nutrients, and really understanding when I boost this nutrient, I got X. When I boost this, I burned the tips and I turned them all yellow. So, that was too much. And really understanding that, from a long-term perspective, going back to my comment on the crop insurance, starting small and getting bigger. So if you're just wanting to get in, hey, start with a half an acre and do smokable with some drip lines, put some plastic mulch bed down, minimal investment, but spend the time to learn what you're doing and putting into it, so that when you're growing over the next handful of years, you really do understand what the plant is and is not capable of, and really get yourself in a position where, if you wanted to go out and knock out 100 acres or 1,000 acres, especially up in that Bakersfield area, you could grow up a lot of acres. Competing with almonds probably not the smartest move, but for the grounds that aren't in almonds, you could scale out quickly and understand what it's going to take to get you there. And then biomass. Unfortunately, the biomass game, guys, is all about scale these days. If you're going to be able to get being able to get out there and sell the cheaper pounds, you've got to be able to scale up and have pretty good infrastructure to be able to do everything from the automation, the mechanization of what today's farmers are going to be able to do for biomass.
Awesome.
Hopefully that
And
answers that question.
yeah, fantastic. I wanted to bring Corey back on and just ask Corey a little bit about the market right now. And then, you mentioned, the state of contracts in the industry, and I just, I think we're all very interested to see, obviously, how the entire industry matures. But, Corey, what is kind of your goal, and how you're viewing the contract deal and just selling the crop once you have it?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I think every day securing a contract is most definitely what everyone's goal is and where everyone's trying to get to. I think I read a stat that less than 13% of farmers in 2019 had a secured contract. And the folks that did secure the contracts might not have that opportunity to secure them again simply because the folks that were securing the contracts or providing the contracts, some of them I've talked to said they won't be doing it in 2020.
Hmm.
That certainly is something to be concerned with, but I think there's, to your question, opportunities to set yourself up for success. And I think when I allude to some of our earlier educational growing series, and most doubtedly the harvest and what you do during harvest is the most key to being successful in selling your crop. And that simply is ensuring that what you grew is available to sell in a format that the market is wanting to have. And as Jansen said earlier, that we're now selling our crop at a higher rate, higher volume than we were previously because we held our price and held our value. But we were able to do such because we were able to store it, prep it, and post harvest. So my recommendation to any farmers is to connect yourself with individuals like we have on our sales team and like we have through Hempton Farms and making us aware of what you're growing, where you're growing, how it's going, but then most importantly, preparing for post-harvest production, making sure that you get your crop down safely, that you get it into a climate-controlled area or an area that is free of the elements, and that you do everything in your power to make sure that the crop doesn't go bad when you're not looking at it every day. So for me, when I look at the crops that are selling well, they are always led by their stored and harvested securely. It's difficult to get to an open market without having a product that the market wants.
Hmm.
So
And
that to me is the best advice I can provide.
got it. And I think we were talking earlier, and I think Jansen also mentioned it. Just to paint a picture a little bit for everyone out there in terms of, a lot of times we talk about the market, and it actually sounds like a very vague term. But in terms of the market, we mean, whether that's a retail tobacco store, that's a dedicated CBD store in your locality, which are obviously opening up, at a rapid rate, at least before COVID they were, as well as e-commerce. There's a lot of different avenues to sell the product. I think one thing that we recommend to our farm partners, as well as practice ourselves, is making sure that you are, constantly networking within these realms, and making sure, because at the end of the season, it's going to be the ability and the relationships with some retailers, with some brokers, for whatever product that you are planning to sell. And the more people you know in the industry, the better. In this case, in the ability to actually move your product. And I think that this is a very, very different part of this market compared to other agricultural products. If we were growing tomatoes in the Central Valley, or I'm sure with like soybeans and almonds as well, the industry that I come from, typically the farmer has had to do virtually nothing on the sales side. Hemp is not necessarily the case because, Corey, like you said, there was 13% that were given contracts. But if you checked the news last year as well, every other week was a company going under and defaulting on contracts because they simply could not support, where the current market was. I think overall for us, I'm more bullish than ever on when I look at the consumer side, in terms of the level of educational awareness we're seeing, just the questions that consumers are asking from a year ago till now are dramatically different. The education level is rising fast, and at the end of the day, this is we are entering the plant-based medicinal era. There are going to be a lot of people who put down Advil and pick up some smokable hemp flower for their headache and for their backache, and the stigma of THC and getting high is going away, and we're realizing the ability to utilize this plant in a lot of different ways. I'm excited every time I look at the consumer market in terms of the diversity of products, the amount of products that you can put a commodity into is one of the general indicators of the long-term stability of pricing. That's one reason. For example, almonds has always been a better investment than walnuts or say cashews, because almonds actually have roughly 200 different uses and ways to slice them, dice them, powdered. They rode, almonds rode the gluten-free wave, and in a heavy way from the flour perspective. And hemp has way more than that. Like I just said, 220,000 possibilities once we get the rest of these things going. So just think about that constantly. It, like we talk about, it's a great crop still. The returns might not be amazing gold rush type of chatter that there was a couple of years ago. That being said, it's still a fantastic commodity to grow and learn how to grow over the long term. I think we'll see dips of ups and downs. There will be lows and highs, but in the end, it will taper off to be a very steady, great agricultural commodity to know how to grow and to be a part of. So I'm done with my rant on that part. I'm excited, but I think that was
Yeah,
useful.
I just like to close up real quick, Justin, if you don't mind, for just 1 second. One last comment before we close up here. Um, and the only thing I can tell everyone, and hopefully all of these scenarios are good to kind of really help people kind of along the way. One of the big things that that we're looking at right now is the market is starting to move from everyone. We're seeing it on the sales side, which is a really good indication on things. The market's starting to open up, and people are starting to look, getting things. So making sure that you have the planning done, making sure that you're planning accordingly and getting things done. If you have the seed start business and you're looking at it, as I said, it's 21 days, if not earlier, for you to get going, especially if you're going to do clones or you're going to do some of those transplants. So, getting with your provider for your genetics, if you're going to make a commitment to do this, you've got to really start moving. May 1st is tomorrow. That gives us 1 month until June, which is really go time for a lot of people in planting. So, work with our sales team. We'd love to be able to earn your business. That's really important for us. And one of the things that we don't want to do is just earn your business. We want to partner with you. As Corey talked about, one of the key things that I think a lot of people have been left behind on is how to really motivate and market your product. Having good genetics. I think a lot of people have seen that this year. They started out saying, hey, I was going to grow smokable, and they were growing, Boax or box or whatever they want to call it. And they're now trying to do it they grew it as biomass. They're trying to unload it as smokable to get themselves even. They can't do it because they chose the wrong genetics at the end of the day. So having good, strong, unique genetics and a partner to sit there and help you along the way is going to be the key to any type of success. You can go, and we're going to be here along the way to help you and give you the extra resources. So as moving forward, I'm not want to push things, but the time is now, and hopefully this is helpful for you to make your decisions. And in Hempton Farms, we appreciate you taking the time tonight, and we want to make sure that 2021, 2022, we're working together. And this is not just a stash and grash cab where, hey, buy genetics from us, you'll never hear from us again. We're here to stay, and we want to be partners with you. So that being said, I'm done with my rant there. Justin, thank you, and I'll let you guys, whoever's closing it up. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jansen. Yeah, this is Corey Hinkie again. I want to reiterate what Jansen said. We really appreciate everyone coming on the call. If you need to, we believe that most of you came through by being reached out to by us. We want to let you know that we are here almost virtually 24 hours a day to help you as your seed decision. As Jansen went through, we have a ton of varieties that we're willing to discuss in greater detail and get you to points of expertise within our company and our organization. To Jansen's point, we strongly want to tell everyone on the call how much we appreciate the opportunity to earn your business. We know for those that are interested, once you type it in your Google search, you will be hit up every day, all day. So like they say in the friendly skies, we know you guys have a choice to fly with multiple airlines, and we sure do appreciate you guys giving us a chance to earn your business. We are shipping out seeds in a few weeks here, as Jansen alluded to. If you have any further questions, please email us us immediately. We will return your email or phone call or schedule another call, whatever it needs to make you get to a point of comfortability in your decision. We're here to help now, and we're here to help throughout the summer and into the fall with all our tools and resources. Unless anyone has any other questions, I think we'll end the call. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for our Seed Decision 2020 Hempton Farms Educational Webinar. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.